All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Financial Aid 101. Tonight, we're going to go over what financial aid looks like, what are the financial aid forms, what are some cost-saving opportunities that you would have as a New Hampshire resident, and all things kind of untangling that web of financial aid. I know it's October, so we're thinking of things that are a little bit more scary. Some people think that the FAFSA and CSS are pretty scary, but we're hoping that we can turn that trick into a treat with some tips and tricks. Oh, I'm so sorry. Please disregard my puns. But I'm happy to have you joining us to watch this, and hopefully we can provide some great insight. My name is Marielle Starrett. I'm an education and career pathway specialist here over at Granite Advance. And because this webinar is in fact a digital format, I wanted to share with you a digital version of our insiders. Our insider guides are these wonderful little info dense material magazine galore on all things future planning. So for tonight's session, the most relevant one is that financial aid insider. If you already have one, that's great. If you prefer a paper copy, you can shoot us an email and we can see if we can get one over to you, or your school counselor might have a stack of these in their office as well. And if this is your first time learning about who Granite Advance is, we are a New Hampshire-based nonprofit. So our entire goal is helping you find your direction and fund your future. So all things future planning is kind of our bread and butter, right? We love working with students, be it in schools, in one-on-one appointments, or presentations like these, digital format, print literature like those insiders, whatever questions you might have that are a next step in your life. And you could be as young as a fifth grader or even younger than that if you're playing around with our 529 calculators on our website, and as old as somebody thinking about what do you want to do with your retirement time. You've got some more resources accessible to you. Wherever you are in your process, we're here to help you. One of the best ways that we can do that is through our one-on-one appointments. You'll see on this screen, we've got 3 financial aid specific appointments. So if you're watching this and you're going, that's great, I learned a lot about the financial aid process, but I've got specific questions and I need help kind of planning out what are we going to do financial aid? How does it all work? And I want to ask some questions. You can sign up for a financial aid planning appointment. Or if you want to file that FAFSA for the first time or the 4th time or the 50th time with us, we have FAFSA assistance appointments where we will actually file with you. And then once you start hearing back from colleges about your financial aid awards, we have a reviewing financial aid award offer letter appointment where we'll help you calculate the bottom line, compare those apples to apples, and talk about some ways that you can kind of pay that bill. We've also got appointments for your younger students and pretty much anyone and everyone. Career aptitude exploration helps you look at your strengths and interests. That's how that relates to your future plan. Exploring future options. Maybe you've got specific questions, or it's kind of our catch-all appointment. So if you want to talk about anything, you can sign up for one of those. Just give us some good notes when you sign up for that appointment. And then college success is once you are already committed to a school, what happens next? Other than that big shower caddy debate between a hard caddy and a soft caddy, what the heck is a FERPA form? How do I transfer colleges if that's something for you? Any resources you might need on campus and you want some help kind of understanding the different offices, we can help with that as well. We also offer support for the college essay process if that's something that you need help with, as well as a little bit on the Common App. We answer questions on the CSS profile, but we don't have a filing appointment for that. So if you have any questions, you can either schedule one of those one-on-one appointments or reach out to us directly. Our contact will be listed at the end of this presentation. But let's get into what we are here to talk about, which is financial aid. We'll start with the basics. How do you prepare for financial aid? What is it? Financial aid is anything and everything that you use to pay for college, right? It's offered in grants, scholarships, work study, student loans, cash and savings even. The goal of financial aid is to help you pay for college. When you look up a school's sticker price, it can be very shocking. You might see, oh my gosh, this school is going to cost us $80,000 a year. How do we make that a more manageable number? Financial aid comes in a lot of different forms from a lot of different sources. So you get student loans could be federal, they could be private. Scholarships are private, they might come from the school. Wherever those funds are, how do we keep in communication between all of the different sectors and all the different sources of financial aid? We help determine need for financial aid through something called the SAI. The SAI is calculated when you file your FAFSA, and it just helps financial aid administrators or anyone kind of scholarships, loans, etc., helping understand, okay, what does the student need? Where on this spectrum that everybody's financial aid system is, where are you landing on it? So that we can compare apples to apples. The folks who have 10 houses and $4 in their bank account, or the people that have $4 million in their bank account and they're really rocking the shack from the Shrieking Shack, right? Whatever it might be. If you're into Harry Potter, I know I've been rewatching some of those movies recently. That SAI can go as low as -1,500 and as high as just shy of $1 million. And it helps reflect kind of the cost of attendance and any adjustments that might be needed in financial aid. The whole point of financial aid distributions is to do that as equitably as possible. That's why we put everybody on the same playing field, apples to apples, so that the folks who need the most financial aid are hopefully getting the most financial aid. But it does depend on the type of aid that is being administered. So of course, if you are looking at need-based aid, then that SAI is going to have a higher weight. But if you're looking at something like merit-based aid, which is a form of gift aid is any aid that you are given to pay for your college that you do not have to pay back. So merit-based aid, instead of being based off of that SAI or other financial information, it's based off of your grades, your SAT scores, your GPA, your community service. How long have you been doing that? How consistently? Maybe you've been playing soccer for your entire life and you're going to go play at a D1 or D2 level. Maybe you're a really great leader and you wrote a really wonderful essay and that unlocked a program, or maybe you're joining an honors program at a college, something like that. That's merit-based. Merit-based gift aid is anything that you've kind of earned, deserved, done. You usually have to apply for it in some way or other. Need-based is determined fully through those financial aid forms. Sometimes you'll have a financial aid appeal. We'll talk about those way later in this presentation. Self-help aid is something that you have sometimes a little bit more autonomy over, right? You have some autonomy over the merit-based aid because you've done the things to deserve that. You've got a little bit of autonomy over those need-based grants, but not really. All the autonomy that you have is providing your information, right? So what did you earn in income and what assets do you have? Self-help aid comes in the form of money that you used for college that you either earned or have to pay back. So you see that most commonly on the federal side through those federal student loans. For college freshmen, you're eligible for $5,500 in federal student loans. Those can come in a split between subsidized and unsubsidized loans. Difference between those two: subsidized loans, while they are accruing interest from the moment they're dispersed, the government is paying off that interest while the student is a full-time enrolled student at the college. Unsubsidized loans are accruing interest just the same, but it is the student's responsibility to pay back that interest from the moment that it's dispersed. Work study is a program that some students may be eligible for. You check eligibility for that through filing your FAFSA. That's just your on-campus job. It's a job that you went out, you interviewed for, you sat and you worked those hours. And because you did all that hard work, they're going to pay you a paycheck, usually bi-weekly. And that paycheck is in part paid for by the federal government, but it's up to you on how you want to use that money. So maybe it's for pizza night on a Friday night, or maybe you're doing some pumpkin carving with friends, or you, as soon as November 1st hits, or maybe even before that, you're sitting down to watch Elf with your friends in your dorm and you want those green and red M&Ms or whatever else it may be. However you spend your time, that money's up to you. You can also use that money through your paycheck to put it into your tuition if that's something that you choose. Maybe you have a tuition payment plan set up. That money is yours the same way it would be if you worked any other job. So how do you determine how much a school is going to cost you when you're thinking about financial aid? So financial aid is all the money that you're using to pay for college, but how do I know what I'm going to pay for college? At this point in the process, we encourage folks to use net price calculators on school websites. They're federally mandated, but they are not all created equally, right? They differ college to college. If you see one that has maybe tuition year dates from 23, 24, you know that's out of date. Or if you see the 3 letters EFC, you know that's a red flag because that's an outdated term in the industry by now. So you're looking for net price calculators. Some of them are going to ask you lots and lots of information about your assets and your income, almost duplicating a FAFSA, or you might want to have your tax return handy to have those numbers. Whereas some are just going to say, okay, what are your income and assets? What are the students' grades? And then here's a projected estimate of what the school institutionally may be offering in financial aid for the student. Sometimes they have that really nicely broken down, cost of attendance, federal aid, institutional aid. Sometimes they'll say, here's $60,000 towards your school. And they might break that down into 20,000 is coming from this, 15 from this, breaking it down. Sometimes they might just say, we're hoping to offer you $60,000, but that's not an official offer. You won't know that number officially until you get that financial aid offer, which we can sit down and review with you at any point. So they are estimates. Some other things to start considering. Once I get that net price calculator out and I've got a net price, my next step, I love on our website, we have a college financing calculator where you can put in the school name, your estimated net price, and then you can play around with some of the other information that you might have access to. So do you have a college savings account? Is the student going to work a summer job and maybe have some cash that they can pay up front? Or are you planning to break something into a tuition payment plan? What's a comfortable amount that you can see? And then it'll break down afterwards what portion of your tuition is being paid from what category, which I think is really cool and can be really helpful. It also has that projected student loan payment as well as percentage of your career and first year earnings that it's going back to paying student loans if you choose to take those out, which can be really helpful for students who are trying to create budgets and things like that. When you're thinking about financial literacy, using tools like net price calculators and our college financing calculator help you have that money talk as early as possible, right? This is the student's journey. This might be a 2-year journey. This might be a 4-year journey. It might be 6 or 8 years, depending on what your goals are. So make the plan for how you're going to pay for college now. And that includes what resources do you have available to you? Are parents going to maybe help and be credit eligible co-signers that might help reduce interest rates, things like that? Or do you have a 529 or a covered all savings account that maybe grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, mom, dad help set up, somebody like that? What amount is in that? So what are you comfortably looking at for debt coming out of college or what you can pay out upfront? What is your plan for that? When you're doing that, focus on those net prices, right? You want to have as close to the numbers that you might actually be seeing as soon as possible so that you can have those realistic conversations. We talked a little bit about merit-based aid and need-based aid on the last slide. Different schools offer their aid in different ways. Some schools are going to be offering exclusively merit-based aid, so things based on your SAT or GPA, things like that. Some schools are going to be just using your SAI or a CSS profile to determine need-based aid. Some schools are going to offer both types of aid. So you can have that conversation with admissions and say, hey, I might need-based aid. Is that something that you offer here? Or I'm looking at my family's financial situation. I don't think I'm going to be eligible for things in need-based aid. Do you offer merit-based aid? Do you have thresholds for those sorts of things? Is there something that I could apply to an institutional scholarship or a different program? I'd love to have a deeper conversation about what resources are available at your institution. Sometimes they even post this information publicly too. So spend some time, do your research, have that conversation, and be aware of, okay, not every school is going to offer every type of aid. As a New Hampshire person, my favorite type of people, there are some specific programs that can help students lower that overall cost of college. One of those programs is called the Granite Guarantee. So if a student is federal Pell Grant eligible, then if they choose to attend either UNH, Keene State College, or Plymouth State University, then they are eligible for a program called the Granite Guarantee. Granite Guarantee is helping cover that cost of tuition. So if you are Pell eligible and going to one of our 3 state schools, the cost of tuition at that school would be covered by the New Hampshire state government. If you have chosen to live on campus, however, so say you're dorming at UNH because you just really want to go to all those games and you don't want to make the drive from home, or you want that, campus dorm experience, then you would still be responsible for paying room and board, any fees. But that tuition piece of your bill, which is often the biggest chunk of change, is covered through the Granite Guarantee program. So that can be life-changing. I usually recommend students do apply to one of the 3 state schools. They've each got their own little personalities. They are all very different. They've got lots of different programs and studies, really great opportunities. You never know what's going to happen in the year between when you apply to college and when you start actually going. So kind of keeping one of those in your back pocket. Another really awesome opportunity for folks is community college. The community college system here in New Hampshire has lots of really wonderful, not only great accredited programs, but also transfer pathways through some of those 3 state schools, as well as other schools in New Hampshire, where you can take some of those gen ed classes or maybe kind of dip your toe in. Maybe you have dual enrollment classes that you've been taking through your high school, and those credits can transfer into a 4-year university or set you up really well for a certificate program or an apprenticeship sometimes, or even an associate's degree. So you can have those skills set you up, and your cost per credit is significantly lower than what it would be at a 4-year institution at this point. Currently, the CCSNH tuition cost is $230 per credit. There's usually a fee associated with that, but you could in theory go to a community college in New Hampshire for around $7,000 a year, which can be much cheaper than some of those 4-year bills off the top. So it's a nice way to either maybe get the hang of college, you want to try things out, or knock out some of those gen ed courses, or just take some of those classes when you are in high school. I know there's even better cost saving programs. Some schools will allow you to take several classes at a community college for no cost to the students. So talk to your school counselor about that. Can be a really awesome opportunity. Another program that we have here in New England is tuition break. So because New Hampshire is nice and small, it's not like Texas where you could probably fit 15 New Hampshires. All of our neighboring states are within a drive for most of us. So because of that, we have only those 3 state schools, and they are wonderful, but they cannot offer every single program. So if there's a state school in, say, Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, or Rhode Island that is offering a program that you really want to pursue, but that's not offered at UNH, Keene State, or Plymouth State, that program may be eligible for tuition break. Tuition break, you can check your eligibility on programs through that website that you see listed on the screen down below. That website does look a little old, but I promise that that is the right website. You can search there to say, okay, does Boston University have this specific program that is not offered here, right? Or UMass, right? Or even UVM, whatever it may be, because maybe UNH, Keene State, or Plymouth State doesn't offer it. So you can search and say, okay, does this program exist in another school and offer tuition break? And what tuition break is, it's a discount, right? You're not paying in-state tuition and you're not paying out-of-state tuition. You're kind of, think of it as you're paying neighbor tuition or something like that, right? It's your New England benefit that says you're kind of close, but you're not quite our home state and you're not quite out of state. That average discount is usually around $8,600 for the program. So use that link to see, check the programs that you're interested in, check if those other state schools are on your list. Maybe you would be eligible for that. The next part of the process is applying for financial aid. So you apply to financial aid typically through financial aid forms. Those 2 main financial aid forms are the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. So that's how you unlock all the federal funds that we were talking about. And then the CSS profile. The CSS profile is used by right around 300 schools. So there's over 3,000 schools in the US. The CSS is used by around 300 of them. So not every school is a CSS profile school. Again, that form is going to take you a whole lot longer to fill out than a FAFSA would, because they're recording more of your financial data. And then it's not a free form. So because it is institutional and private, there is a fee associated with it. So there's a $7 processing fee for your first school, as well as a $16 fee to send your CSS profile to each of your schools. So your first school, think of it, if you're sending it to one school, it's going to cost you $25, versus if you're sending it to additional schools, that fee is a one-time fee. So you're only paying it for your first school. What we recommend is that students check what forms their schools need, right? So most schools are going to require that FAFSA, and then some schools are going to require your FAFSA and your CSS profile. Both of those forms are currently open now. The FAFSA lives at studentaid.gov because it's a federal form, and the CSS lives at cssprofile.org. They're administered by the College Board. You can check on their website what schools require the CSS. So double check with your college list what form is needed for each school and what's the deadline/due date for that form. And that can change if you're applying early action, early decision. You might have an earlier deadline than those regular decision or rolling admissions financial aid deadlines. So making sure that you know per school what's your deadline, and then filing your forms I usually say at least 3 days before that first deadline in case there's any glitches, any processing issues. That way you have it in and sent. So we're going to talk a little bit about the FAFSA. You saw on our appointment slide, we file a lot of FAFSAs. We have a FAFSA filing appointment, so we know quite a bit about it. And if you want to file with us, we're totally happy to. But the goal of your FAFSA is to collect your financial aid information, which will then be sent to the schools that you list on your FAFSA, as well as that SAI number, which is that apples to apples comparison number that's used across the different sectors to help determine financial need. We recommend that everybody file the FAFSA. These days, and we're all very grateful for this. I don't know if any of you filed the FAFSA a few years ago, or maybe you filed way back and it was a paper form. These days, you can file your FAFSA in 15, 20 minutes sometimes. Sometimes it takes a full hour, so our appointments do have that hour buffer in case you've got additional questions. But we say everybody should file your FAFSA. It doesn't take too long because most of that information is automatically verified through the IRS. You're only answering a few questions. Most of them are things that you already know, like your name and some of your demographic data. So file your FAFSA because it's not just unlocking that federal aid, although you never know what you're eligible for. So that's one reason to file. But the other reason is if you're applying to private scholarships, many of them will ask for your SAI number because they want to double check that you have filed your FAFSA first and made sure that you were eligible for any federal funds. The FAFSA form does have to be filed every single year. Same thing with your CSS profile, because it is pulling in your prior tax years. So if you're filing the 2026, 2027 FAFSA form, then it's looking at your tax return from 2024. And when you go to file next year's or 27, 28 FAFSA to go with the 27, 28 school years, maybe your sophomore year in college, if you're a first year now, they're going to use your 2025 tax information. So those things are updated. You file your FAFSA online through studentaid.gov. It's open and live now. You can file a paper FAFSA if you so choose, but we usually say it's nice and easy on the website. That's what we use in appointments because it's a smart form. It'll ask you the questions that it needs the answers for. If you have questions when you're filing your FAFSA, you can always give us a call. We have a phone system that's monitored from 8 to 5 every day, as well as the federal government also has a call center for their FAFSA that you can chat with too. They have a really cute little AI chat bot. I think its name's Aiden as well for aid. Get it? So if you have questions, feel free to use that chat bot. You can call into FAFSA or you can call us, and you'll get one of our sunshiny personalities on the other side of that phone. To create your FAFSA account to file your FAFSA, you're going to need to create an account. To do that, you first want to determine who's going to need an account, which we'll talk a lot about that on the next couple slides because sometimes that can be tricky. But before you file your FAFSA, every person who needs a FAFSA account, which is an FSA ID, needs to create an account. You can do that on studentaid.gov. Top right corner, there's a little button that says create an account. You want to create an account for the student and then any needed contributors. Contributors might already have an account because they are linked to your Social Security. So you get one FAFSA account for your life. So either resetting those passwords if folks have forgotten them, and then when you create your account for the first time, make sure you save your passwords because you're going to need it. If you choose to have kids in 30, 40 years when they're going to college, you'll need your login information too, as well as your login information if you choose to take out federal loans or other sources like that. You have access to all of that information. So make sure you save that in a safe spot. This year, if you are a US citizen that has a Social Security number, then you can create your account and file your form in the same day, which is nice. If you do not have a Social Security number that can be verified easily through the Department of Homeland Security, then you want to create your account at least 3 days before you file your FAFSA. So making sure you build in some extra buffer for her time since your identity has to be verified through other sources. To create an account, you'll need your legal name, your Social Security or A number, depending on what you've got, a unique cell phone number, and a unique email address. And you'll need to have access to both of those accounts because you'll have to verify both of those for two-step verification. Once you finish creating your account, so it'll take in your demographic information, your address, your social, your email, your phone. It'll take in some security questions, like maybe what was the name of your first pet. Then at the end of that, you will be given a backup code I like to think of that as your Hail Mary. That's how you get into your account if you lose access to all of the other things that we just determined when you were creating your account. So who do you determine needs a FAFSA account? Depends on if a student is deemed dependent or independent. So if you're a student that is deemed dependent, that means you have a required contributor. So somebody who needs to add their information to your FAFSA. The FAFSA is the student's form, but sometimes they need additional information from somebody like a parent or biological or adoptive parent. It's slightly different than tax dependent. So even if you filed your taxes and you're dependent on somebody's taxes, you may or may not be dependent on your FAFSA. So the nice thing about the FAFSA is that it is a smart form and it'll be walking you through your dependency status. Once you get to this little bubble on the right, this picture, this is part of your form after you answer some of those dependency questions that'll tell you if you're a dependent student or if you're a conditionally independent student. Conditionally independent students don't need a contributor on their form. It's because the form has deemed them somebody who doesn't have somebody who may be supporting them financially in any way. Just because you have a required contributor on your form does not mean that that person is required to help you pay for college, just means that they need to provide their information. So what are those circumstances that would deem a student conditionally independent? They would be conditionally independent if they are married, if they have dependents that they support financially more than 50%. So if they've got children, if the student is over the age of 24, if they already have a bachelor's degree or higher, if they are or were a member of the U.S. Armed Forces, if they are unaccompanied and homeless or self-supporting, if at any time since they were 13 they were an orphan, ward of the court, or in foster care, if a student is legally emancipated, or if a student at the time that they turned 18 was in a legal guardianship with somebody other than their biological or adoptive parents, or if a student is putting themselves in any form of harm or risk to contact their parents to have them be on their FAFSA form. So these are some of the instances where a student would not need a contributor on their form. All of these circumstances are then verified. So we say conditionally independent because if you select any of these on your FAFSA form, it's going to let you proceed without adding contributor information. But each one of their schools on your list that gets your FAFSA is then going to have this verified in one way or other. So they'll reach out, say you're married, they're going to say, hey, do you have a marriage certificate that we can look at? Or if you have children, they're going to say, hey, can we see birth certificates? And then proof that you support them financially. Or if you're if you were legally emancipated, they're going to look for court documentation, all of those types of things. If you do need to have a contributor on your FAFSA form, it's a question then of who's going to be the contributor on your FAFSA form. So the first question when we think about contributors and who needs an account. So the student needs an account, and now required contributors if the student is independent require an account. So you go with the student and then you go up a level. Do they have, are their parents adoptive or biological married? If they are married, then the next question, so this unit is, do they file their taxes separately or jointly? If they file their taxes jointly, then one person from that unit is representing both parties because their taxes are joined. So you can choose one of those folks to be your FAFSA parent. Sometimes if you are in that situation, you might want to choose the person who's going to have a more flexible schedule next year, because when you file your FAFSA again and you're in college, your schedule might be a little bit more wonky. So maybe you want somebody who has a little bit more availability, or maybe somebody who has access to all of those bank accounts that you're going to need that financial data reported. So you can kind of choose between those two people. If your biological or parent or adoptive parents are not married, then we will talk about that on the next slide, but they are married and they file their taxes separately. So this unit now has two pieces of financial information. Both of those people need contributor accounts or your FSA IDs, so they will both be contributors on your FAFSA so that we get both sets of that tax information. There is a parent wizard on FAFSA as well. This is a tool that will walk you through. You can put in, my parents' names are Sam and Joe, and it'll ask you questions about Sam and Joe, and then it'll tell you who needs to be a contributor on your form. Again, your FAFSA is a smart form, so it'll tell you a little bit if you need a contributor, and then it'll help walk you through those things. That wizard will help you determine who needs to be a FAFSA parent. If your parental, adoptive, or biological unit is not married, so say they're divorced or separated, Then the question of who's going to be on the form. Only one of those people needs to be on the form. The question of who it's going to be is dependent on who has provided more financial support for the student in the last year. So this is all encompassing. So thinking of things like housing, utilities, food, gas in a car. If one of those parents provides more financial support, then that is your FAFSA parent. If your parents both pay for you penny for penny, you've got a Venmo history as long as the scrolls, then it is the parent who has a higher income and assets. So you've determined that first contributor, right? So if your parents are divorced or separated, your biological or adoptive parents are divorced or separated, then the question is who provides more financial support, or if they're equal, then it's who has the higher income or assets. That person is your contributing parent. Then the next question you have to ask is this person, out of the two that you determined, has this person remarried? If no, then that's your FAFSA parent. That's who they're going to put on that's the only contributor you're going to need on your form. If that parent has remarried, you get to add your step parent back into this mix. And then you say, okay, how do they file their taxes, jointly or separately? If they file jointly, then your biological or adoptive parent is going to be reporting for both of those people. If they file their taxes separately, then both people, your biological or adoptive parent, as well as your step parent, need to be contributors on your FAFSA form. Again, not saying that they're on the hook to pay, they just need to provide information. So making sure that everybody's information is added to your FAFSA as needed. And again, it'll walk you through all these things, and there's that parent wizard. If you've got questions about this, feel free to drop them in the chat or give us a call, or even send us an email, and we can help walk you through these things. So that's who needs an account. How do we determine these accounts? How do we set up these accounts? What are dependency statuses? The next major thing that the FAFSA asks for is financial information. So it's a financial aid form. It's taking in your financial information. Income is taken in from your taxes. So it's verified with the IRS. Again, that's using prior years. That's going to be looking at things like wages, rental income payouts, IRA rollovers, pensions, that sort of thing. All of that is mostly pulled in. You'll have a few questions about those IRAs and pensions that you'll answer based on your tax return, as well as asset information. Asset information is as of the day that you file. So assets include cash, savings, checking accounts, UGMAs, UTMAs, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. If you've got a beach house, a cabin, a lake house, any residence that's not your primary home residence, the value of that. If you've got a business or farm or fishery, the value of that may be needed depending on the type of business, how many employees, how much it's worth. If you have mutual funds, if you're part of a trust fund, if you're a listed beneficiary on any of those things, if you have college savings accounts that were opened by the parents or in the student's name, you'll need that information as well. So it's pretty much any account that you have that is non-retirement. So the FAFSA is not going to be looking at things like 401ks, 401(b)(s, and IRAs, but pretty much everything else is going to be accounted for on your FAFSA in the financial information section. So we've got a list of some of these common questions. We made it through a good chunk of what the FAFSA is going to be looking at. So some of these you already know, so kind of quiz yourself now. First is, whose FAFSA is it? It is the student's FAFSA form. What's the deadline to complete the FAFSA? It's school dependent. So making sure that you take the time to go and check those school websites next to your college list. Does this school require the FAFSA? Do they require the CSS? What are the deadlines for both of those schools? Making sure that you file before those deadlines. What year tax return should your family use? Depending on the FAFSA that you're filing. So if you're filing the 26-27 FAFSA, you're going to be using 2024 taxes because it's prior years. If you're filing the 25-26 FAFSA, then you're using 2023 tax returns. Does the number of college students in the household impact financial aid? Answer here, maybe. The FAFSA will ask for your household size. That is used to determine overall things like your SAI calculation. And then it will have a secondary question of, out of the people in your household, how many will be in college next year? Maybe you've got a student who's going to be a freshman in college next year. Maybe you've got an additional student who's going to be a junior next year. You can put 2 into that box, and then it's up to the schools if they want to account for that in their financial aid package. So some schools will say, oh, that's really hard to be putting 2 kids through college at the same time. here's additional financial aid funds that we were able to provide you. Some schools will say, yeah, that's really hard, but we don't have any funds that we can give you, or that's not part of how they distribute their institutional aid. Last question. If a student is not sure they are going to college, should they complete the FAFSA? I always say yes, because it unlocks. You may not be aware that you were eligible for federal grants or things like that, and that can be, changing the open doors in front of you. Or if you have scholarships that you want to apply to, then you get that SAI number, and then a lot can change in a year, right? Maybe you're not thinking of going to a college now, but maybe next August or next June, July, you're like, okay, maybe I want to take a class here or there. At least your FAFSA will already be filed. There's no harm in having a FAFSA filed and not sent anywhere. There's no negative effects anyway. The things that start counting are when funds are dispersed, but that's not going to happen when you file your FAFSA. Your FAFSA is just kind of your screening application to check for eligibility for aid. It's not you signing a contract to take out that aid. It's a little bit about the FAFSA. If you've got more questions about that, feel free to throw them in the chat. Feel free to reach out to us or schedule a FAFSA appointment, and that way we can file it with you. Maybe it's your first rodeo, maybe it's your last rodeo, whatever it may be, we're here for those. Let's move a little bit on to the CSS profile. So the difference is the FAFSA is a federal form, the CSS is a private form. Not as many schools use the CSS profile. It's used by approximately 250 colleges. Again, it's screening for that institutional aid piece. If you already took your SATs or you have a College Board account, it is the same folks who administer the CSS profile. So if you've got a login from your SATs, you use that same login to enter your CSS profile. Your parents will also use your login information depending on if they are custodial parents, so the person that you live with. If you have a non-custodial parent, they will have their own account. Parents are able to set up their own account if they would like to not kind of be included with the student. Again, it's not a free form. It's that $25 fee for the first school that you send. That includes that one-time processing fee, and then $16 for each additional school. If it proves to be a financial hardship, or maybe you had a SAT fee waiver because it's a financial aid form, you're putting in a lot of your financial information, you may be eligible for fee waivers that'll be determined again through the smart form. So you'll just get to the end, and instead of being asked for credit card information, it will just say your form was submitted. If you want to check what schools are eligible for the CSS, you can go over to cssprofile.org, and they have a list of participating institutions right there on their website. Or when you're checking for all of those deadlines for your schools, they might be posted on the school-specific financial aid website. Both the CSS and the FAFSA are using at least two prior years tax information. CSS is going to look for prior years and current years. But since they are pulling in tax information that might be outdated, we know that some people's financial realities have changed. Maybe there was a job loss, or you had high medical expenses, something like that, where your financial picture from 2 years ago does not align with your financial picture today. There's something called a change in circumstances, special circumstances, financial aid appeal. All of these words can kind of be used where you can communicate that with the school-specific financial aid offices. So typically that's posted on their financial aid website. It might be in their student information system or student portal that you're setting up for schools. For each one of the schools that you applied to, you want to submit this change of circumstances, special circumstances, whatever else they may call it, to each one of the schools, opening up that conversation. They, again, are probably going to be looking for documentation, so maybe something like a W-2 or notice of when you left your job, or medical bills if you had to pay those, to make sure they can verify this information. After they have all of that in front of them, they may be able to adjust your financial aid package, but have some realistic expectations of what this is going to look like. It might not going to be, 10 grand. Maybe it's $1,000. Maybe it's a few $100s. Maybe it's a few thousand, depending on the school. Those changes are going to be different. But they will put together a financial aid offer that are based on all of the context and information that you gave them. So some things that might be considered, we talked about these: loss or reduction in employment. If you've had separation or divorce in the last 2 years, you'll actually put in your tax information manually and start peeling that out on the actual FAFSA form itself. If there was a death of a parent who had high unreimbursed medical or dental expenses, you had unusual losses in business, investments, or real estate, those sorts of things may be considered. Things that probably won't be considered: vacation expenses, grad school for a sibling, you had a big fat Greek wedding, you went on a shopping spree on Black Friday and you've got high consumer debt, or as much as we all love them, our pets that are part of our family, but if you had high medical or related expenses for your pet, that's probably not going to be considered in a financial aid appeal. Bringing back some of that autonomy into this process, once you've applied for the financial aid forms, you've applied for college, you want to start looking at the scholarship search. There's millions of dollars that goes untouched in scholarships every year. We've got a scholarship here, Granite Advance, that we are very proud to offer because we want to support students on their academic and journeys, right? Lots of people believe that, so they want to give you money. So the way you approach the scholarship search is time saving, avoiding burnout. How do we preserve this? It's a long process. So you want to start as close to home as possible. You want to start with your school. Maybe your school counseling office has a list of local scholarships, or maybe your town's resource librarian has compiled a list, and maybe that's the Rotary Club, the Historical Society. Maybe there's an ice cream shop in your town that really wants to support college journeys. So you can apply to those scholarships, because then you're going to be a big fish in a really small pond. Checking with the student's employer and parent's employer, they might have scholarships you can apply for, they might have tuition reimbursement benefits, and they might tell you no, but maybe you've planted a seed in that HR person's head to consider adding this as a benefit. So making sure that you're checking with those folks. We've seen scholarships come out of, Starbucks, Dunkin's, Market Basket, lots of really great opportunities there. So it never hurts to ask. Then you want to move out to New Hampshire. I said this when I first started, but Granite Advance, we've got a scholarship. Last year, we were able to give out $750,000. We're very proud of that. Our scholarship checks come in the form of $1,000 because they are for apprenticeship programs, certificates, associates, as well as up to $3,000 for those 4-year programs. If depending on what you're applying to, what type of program you're looking at, you're going to apply to a different scholarship pool. Our trade school certificate and associates scholarship is open now. It has more reoccurring cycles throughout the year. If you're looking at a bachelor's program, that's going to open in the spring. So keep an eye out on our website. That deadline's going to change just like those financial aid deadlines change. So keep an eye out on that. We've got 4 categories. If you are eligible for 4 categories, apply to all 4 categories. Put your name in each one of those hats because you're more likely to get pulled out, right? You can't be pulled out of a hat that you're not in. So if you are a leader or you have great community service, apply to that category. If you are a first generation student, apply to that category. Maybe you've worked really hard in academics, apply to that category, and then everybody can apply to their last category because that's tell us your story, tell us a little bit about you. Every single person's got a story, so you can at least apply to that one. The other great New Hampshire scholarship that we love is New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. They also have scholarships available for 4-year students as well as those 2-year certificate trade programs. So checking on their website for when their deadline is. Last year, they gave out a little over $8 million, sorry, big discrepancy there. To just New Hampshire students. And the way they do that is by managing lots of different pools of money. So their application is going to look a lot different than our application. Their application is going to start with a big long checklist. Do you live in Hanover? Have you touched grass recently? All of those things. Check all of the ones that apply to you so that you can be matched with more funds and submit that application. Because again, New Hampshire is a nice and small state. It doesn't hurt. After you've done those local scholarships and those New Hampshire-based scholarships, maybe some of those New England scholarships, so things like the Red Sox Foundation, they often have scholarships available for students. Then you want to be looking at the national search. National search is kind of like a dating app for financial aid, right? Start that search now. Those deadlines, again, they're going to be all over the place, but there are plenty of websites that have scholarships. You see some common ones that are listed here. So scholarships.com, scholarships 360, FastWeb. I recommend you pick one of them because once you create a profile on one of these, they're going to match you with any and every scholarship that you would be eligible for, and they're going to send you an email for pretty much every one of those. And they're going to send you reminders, making sure you're going to get a lot of emails. So create your profile. and they're going to try and match you with all of the scholarships possible. Some of these scholarships, like the 30-second no essay scholarship, right? They're going to have a huge competition pool. So you go from being a big fish in a little pond to a big fish in a really, really big pond, even an ocean. So making sure that you are managing that. You can make that pond a little bit smaller by filtering for things that make you uniquely you. So for me, I found out when I was a senior in high school that I was a daughter of the American Revolution. I applied to their scholarship, right? Whatever it is that you're learning about yourself or you know about yourself, see if there are scholarships that match that. Making sure you can even create your own unique email address that's maybe marielstar at paysforcollege@gmail.com or Marielle goes to college@gmail.com or whatever it may be, Yahoo, AOL. That way you can have multiple sets of eyes on that account if you want to share that password with your parents to kind of help feed through all of those emails. You can have them all stored in the nice same place if you have to reapply to any of those scholarships next year. And you're keeping those emails out of your general inbox. So you're making it a little easier to weed through all of the information that you have. If you have already created your college essay, maybe some supplemental essays, hang on to those because when you're applying to scholarships, maybe the questions are similar and you can kind of use those words and just tweak. A lot of the questions are going to be very similar. Maybe it's like, how do you contribute to your community? Maybe write one essay that answers several different questions so that you can spend time just subbing out a sentence here or there to make sure it matches the question that they're asking, instead of having to rewrite 500 words every single time. If you are ever asked to pay for a scholarship application, there's a fee to submit. That's a scam. Don't submit that. Run and hide. Scholarships are aimed at giving you money, not taking your money from you. It's a nice thing to remember. All right, we're nearing the end. So as a quick recap, what are we doing to prepare? Before you file those financial aid forms, you want to gather your required information. So your tax returns, if you've got those handy, your bank account balances, all of those things. Make sure that you're ready to file your CSS and your FAFSA if it's needed. You can check all of those things online. So maybe cross-referencing your college list with those financial aid deadlines as well, making sure that you've got all of that as organized as possible so that you've got a plan. Make sure that you file that FAFSA. You can add up to 20 schools on your first go. If you're applying to more than 20 schools, you can add them at a later point. It's very easy to make that correction. You just take some schools off and you add your new schools once your FAFSA form is processed and sent, making sure you're getting that in before that earliest deadline, which you now have in that big, beautiful spreadsheet, as well as which schools might also need the CSS profile and making sure that gets submitted before that deadline as well. So I know that was a ton of information thrown at you, but I want to reiterate that we are here for you throughout your entire process. So if you want quick tips and tricks, follow us on Instagram. If you want reminders about when our scholarship comes out, follow us on Instagram. If you want upcoming events and other things that we're putting on to learn about different parts of the process, follow us on Instagram. If you've got specific questions, you can contact us through that phone line. You can contact us via email. You can schedule one of those one-on-one appointments. You can schedule an appointment to file your FAFSA with us or review a financial aid award letter or anything else. That's that middle QR code there. And then if you've got feedback on tonight's presentation that you want to share with us so that we can make it even better next year, or some questions that you still have that are unanswered, you can share that in that far right QR code that it goes straight to us so that we can tailor exactly what you need. So I want to say thank you for coming again. I hope you found this information valuable and you feel empowered to start your financial aid journey. Again, we're here for you if you need anything. Feel free to contact us in the way that is the most convenient for you. And thanks for taking the time to learn a bit about financial aid. All right, have a nice day.